Whether it's Mueller or the media, this idea that we might be a tad obsessed with this, but the markets, which are an interesting read, because you think of it, they bet with real money, their money, actually a lot of times your money. They do not seem to be fazed by this, do not seem to be fazed by all the trade back and forth. So that's rather remarkable. Let's get the read from Fox Business's Susan Lee. We got Fox News contributor Jonas Ferris, and finally, Dan Geltrude. Dan, and with you, begin with you. That's stunning to me. I mean, people who have put real money on the line don't seem to think this is going to shake the line. It's not going to shake the country. It's not going to be damaging. What do you think?
Well, they're looking at it and say these types of things in the news, emotional things go on, that happens all the time. Let's really look at the substance of what's going on here. So the substance is lower taxes, lower regulations. That has been fueling the market for a while now. Now, let's go past that and say, well, tariffs. Now, that's serious because that is a tax and it's going to trigger inflation. Then what happens? You know what I say? I say the Fed may very well back away from rising the interest rates to combat inflation and let more money flow into the market. So I think the market looks at this and says, we have good times ahead.
We have a win-win here. You know,
yes.
Susan Lee, one of the things I found interesting when we got the announcement, yesterday on this widening investigation that brought in 12 Russian operatives, top intelligence military officers. I looked at the Dow before that. I looked at the Dow after that. Actually climbed.
That's
after
right.
the analysis. So what are we to make of that? So
J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon, the CEO, says something I think is rather telling of what the market's thinking. He says all this dramatics, it affects psyches, not economics. And you saw that in the markets yesterday. So the Dow finishing above 25,000, S&P above 2,800. And these are, psychological levels as well. I spoke to a lot of traders at the New York Stock Exchange yesterday about the announcements and all the hysteria that's taking place with the protests in London. They said, we don't care at the end of the day. What we care is that the president is pro-business. The Trump administration is pro-business, meaning cutting red tape, meaning cutting taxes, and the government is spending. For us, heading into an earnings season that's going to be the best in 7 years, for them, that's a buying signal.
That's the powerful backdrop, right? Jonas, do you buy that argument?
Not anymore, because that all explains why the U.S. market's not tanking and all this. But why aren't Russian stocks tanking? And then how come Bitcoin isn't tanking? The Mueller investigation says that the Russians use Bitcoin to do this, orchestrate this whole thing. This is still something you can legally buy in an app in America.
Bitcoin is at 6,000. It is tanking. It's not above the 10,000 level that we saw a few months ago.
But this week we found out the Russians use crypto coin to do this
But I mean, you can't bet an argument on where Bitcoin is at any given moment.
No, but my point is that investors, whether it's in Russian stocks, U.S. stocks, or crypto coins, if those are even investors and not speculators, are completely dismissing that the G7 countries might ban this completely, this cryptocurrency, because it can be used for taking over elections in theory, although that probably didn't really fully happen. And why wouldn't Russian stocks tank? I mean, the whole country is wrapped up in this. It seems like, again, Russians are the ones going down right now. Americans is only a few. And then you can say, well, our economy is much bigger.
We shouldn't get too cocky.
It could be because of index funds. At the end of the day, the Russian market is 3.5% of emerging market index funds, and that's where money goes into index funds today. It's not the 80s.
All right, that's fair enough argument. Dan, one of the arguments is that certainly other markets and those that are in focus like China's and elsewhere, they've been feeling the heat a lot more on trade, on other issues than we have. Russia a lot more on other issues than we have. How long you see that continuing?
Well, trade war is not a good thing. I think everybody recognizes
this. But that, by the way,
this.
is a big issue to you right now. The Mueller investigation, where it goes, is not.
It is not. No, I think the tariffs are more of an issue. And let me tell you where I think this is going to go. I think that we're going to have continued escalation in this trade war between us and China. I think China's going to be very strategic about where they're going to place their tariffs. They're going to look to weaken the president in the midterm elections. If they're successful, they believe that the president will have to come to the table because he'll be politically weakened and have to negotiate.
Interesting.
If he comes out of that strong, Neil, I see the escalation continuing.
All right, Susan Lee. We know the administration is getting poised now to get $200 billion in tariffs on additional Chinese goods, so we know that it's going to heat up before it calms down.
Right. So I spent over a decade in Asia, and I have to say that the reaction from China to the 10% tariffs on $200 billion is telling silence. Okay. Radio
Silence.
silence.
Radio
They just don't
silence.
know how to react at
All
this
right.
point. And can I just say your Scottish accent?
It's fine.
Well, Australian on 3 martinis?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. You're not invited back. Speaking of which, the timing of all of this. It's weird. Why is it happening now? A former